Hi everyone, and thanks for tuning in to our April CBRFC water supply webinar. My name is Paul Miller. I'm a senior hydrologist at the Colorado Basin River Forecast Center in Salt Lake City, Utah. What you're seeing right now is a map of our forecast groups and our forecast areas that we're responsible for here at the CBRFC. So I'll be going over the forecasts for this month at many of these areas, hitting the highlights. More details can be found at our website, www.cbrfc.noaa.gov. Just a quick overview on today's presentation. We're going to talk about March weather, more likely the lack of March weather that we saw. Very dry conditions, not a whole lot of storms coming through. It really played an important role in our forecast this month. We'll talk about the current conditions that are driving the forecast, and then we'll really hit into the April final water supply forecast summary. We'll hit the highlights, talk about the important points throughout the basin and some of the factors that went into making those forecasts. And then we're going to get a little bit into more detail about the really record-breaking conditions that we're seeing this year with regards to Streamflow and Snowpack. Then we'll talk a little bit about what the future weather is going to show for us. So March weather, storms were very quick, very infrequent, pretty warm and dry. On March 2nd, you can see a screenshot on the left there of storm activity. We had a quick storm that moved across the upper Colorado River Basin, but then that high pressure ridge that has really been camping out the past 3 years and really dominating our weather system over the Colorado Basin River Forecast Center area reestablished itself by March 5th. And we've seen that pretty much all of 2015, all of 2014, all of 2013. It's a very persistent feature that's really been dominating our weather patterns the last few years, particularly in the upper Colorado River Basin. Storm activity really just wasn't apparent throughout much of March. We use these weather climate models that, they're pretty reliable, 5 to 7 days out. But once you get, more than that, there's a lot of uncertainty that goes into the weather and forecasting what's going to happen. And we joke around a lot in our office that, there's always a storm 10 days out, and it doesn't seem to materialize. And so I thought I'd kind of show one of those examples here. On March 10th, you can see just off of the Pacific and just off the coast of Northern California there, we had a lot of activity going on up there. And the models were showing that there was a good chance for this storm activity to come across the upper Colorado River Basin, give us some of that precipitation that we desperately need, and provide some snowpack, provide some rain, anything will help. So you can see on March 13th that storm started to weaken, and by March 24th, by the time the trough kind of leveled out there, the storm was much weaker, much further north. We really didn't get a whole lot out of it, and then by March 28th, you can see dry conditions returned to the basin. And with those dry conditions, you can see here that we're illustrating just sort of the distribution of precip. If you look on your left, you'll see the precip for March, and you can see over the whole, most of the region, Utah, especially in the Great Basin, very dry conditions, well below average. There's a slight portion there in the upper Green River Basin area, kind of towards the eastern edge there. Got a little bit of precip, and then Arizona, this is kind of their dry season anyways. They're not getting a lot of precip. So they did have a couple little storms that moved through, pushed them close to the average for the state, but really doesn't help us out a whole lot with water supply when you get those storms to the south that typically rain events, not a lot of storage, capacity down there for helping out the water supply conditions. So in general, a pretty dry, pretty warm month. Looking at the water year, you can see, especially in the Great Basin, dry conditions. Kind of in the San Juan region, near the Four Corners area, slightly better conditions, almost near normal there. Some sporadic areas. The upper Colorado headwaters not looking too awful right now, but still very small areas when it comes to looking at the total CBRFC region, and ultimately what contributes to the water supply at the big reservoirs like Lake Powell, like Lake Mead. And I think the big story here is March. We had the record warmest temperatures in Utah and for Salt Lake City for the winter, and I think March set a few records of its own. You can see our max temps for March across the entire region well above average, and when you look at our min temps especially, really warm conditions just throughout the entire region. Brian McInerney, who's the service hydrologist over at the Salt Lake City Weather Forecast Office, mentioned that a lot of our temperatures in Salt Lake City are mimicking temperatures that are a full month ahead. So for instance, in January, our average temperatures looked like our average temperatures in February. And in February, our average temperatures looked like our average temperatures in March. So it's been a really warm year so far, historically warm winters, particularly in the upper Colorado River Basin area. Just to kind of underscore that fact here, I wanted to show something different, something interesting that we usually don't show on these kinds of webinars. So I took these plots off the USGS website, and this is for Red Butte Creek at Fort Douglas, which isn't located too far away from our office. It's just a few miles away. And what I wanted to show here is that if you look at each of these plots for 2012, 2013, and 2014, and 2015, we're showing water temperature in degrees Celsius on the y-axis and winter months along the x-axis. And you can see part of 2012, they didn't have a water temperature probe over there yet. But, you know, starting in late 2012, you can see cooler temperatures, you know, some freezing conditions there when we get down to that 0 mark. 2013, lots of cold conditions, lots of zeros. We're basically staying within that 0 to 2 degree range through the middle of February. Same with 2014. 2014 was really cold. You can see the axis on that one is even a little bit smaller. It was such a cooler year. But very cold conditions, lots of zeros. You know, we're between 0 and 2 degrees C, basically from the start of the year through around the middle of February. 2015, not the case. If you take a look at our temperatures there, you know, January was a little bit warmer than usual, but then you get towards the end of January, and you can see we're well above that 2 degrees Celsius range. We're into 4 degrees, 6 degrees Celsius at the beginning of February. And if you think about the amount of energy that it takes to warm water, you know, if you've got your tea kettle on your oven, and, you know, you're trying to heat your water for your tea or your coffee, it takes a while to heat up that water. It's no different out there in the real world. There's a lot of energy that goes into heating water. And so when you're talking about water that typically is around 2 degrees Celsius, and now we're talking about this year seeing water that's, you know, in that 6-7 degree range, that's a lot of energy. It's really hot, and just kind of underscores just how warm this March has been. So what does all this mean? So we've had poor snow conditions because we've just haven't had the precip. We've had record warm temperatures, and this has led to early melt and runoff in the basin. And so when you go out to the USGS and we talk to our colleagues out there and we look at these Streamflow gauges on their website, many of the gauges are welling well above average than what they usually do despite these poor snowpack conditions. So you might be sitting there thinking, like, if I told you that we have average snowpack, a reasonable guess, an intuitive guess might be to say, oh, we'll probably have average streamflow runoff. Well, when you have these big temperature increases and these really poor snowpack conditions, what ends up happening is all that snow that's supposed to run off in April, May, June, July, it's running off now in March. And so our March values are very close to average, even though our March streamflow values are very close to average, even though our snowpack values aren't so much. So it's not a good thing when we're seeing these high flows early on and these very poor snowpack conditions. It just means that all that snow that's supposed to be melting off later on down the road, it's melting off right now. And so we've also seen in these gauges these diurnal fluctuations where we're seeing those peaks during the day and then they kind of slow down at night. So that's what we mean with the diurnal flow conditions. Usually we don't see those until, beginning of March, middle of March. We'll start seeing some of those diurnal fluctuations, but we actually started seeing them as early as late January, particularly at low elevation sites in Utah where the temperatures were the warmest. And then gauges that are usually ice affected, sometimes we can't use these gauges because the water will freeze, we won't be getting good readings. Usually we won't be able to use all our gauges again until middle of March, around this time period or so. We were able to use a bunch of these gauges because they weren't ice affected very early in the year. So by about the middle of February, we were using information from gauges that usually are ice affected, but we're not ice affected this year. And again, just talking to just how warm it's been this year. So I downloaded a couple images here, and if you look to the left, you'll see a map with SNOTEL sites that you can get off of our website. And I was just plotting the percent of average snowpack conditions, and you can see lots of reds, lots of oranges, lots of yellows indicating below average conditions, drier conditions. And to the right, I wanted to kind of emphasize this point about the streamflow a little bit. So I looked at the USGS website, and you can see, especially along the headwaters of the Colorado here, we're seeing gauges that are running well above normal for their 28-day averages. These black dots indicate new highs. So you can see right along the headwater regions, we're seeing that snow melt, we're seeing those diurnal fluctuations, and we're seeing gauges that are flowing at near record volumes. And so just to kind of pick out some of these points here, if we look at some of these particular SNOTEL stations along the upper Colorado headwaters regions, if we look at Stillwater Creek, we're seeing the third driest snowpack on record there. Over at Trapper Lake, the second driest on record there. McClure Pass, it's the driest snowpack conditions that we've ever seen there. And most of these records run, probably around 30, 35 years. Willow Creek Pass, which is actually one of the few stations that looks like it's still kind of rising a little bit, still accumulating a bit of snowpack, still the 8th driest. Last year was a pretty dry year, and many of us were thinking, odds are we won't get worse than last year. Well, this year is definitely worse than last year. If we had conditions similar to last year, we'd be in much better shape water-wise. But anyways, very dry snowpack conditions. And so I wanted to underscore this point a little bit. So I downloaded the map from our website showing all the SNOTEL stations that we use. And this is really cool and really easy to do. So you can go to our website, and if you go to the right and click on the snowpack conditions, and then if you click this little button here that says rank them by percentiles, you'll be able to see all the red squares. Those are all SNOTEL sites that are showing record lows on their period of record. So you can see all along the Great Basin here in Salt Lake City into the Cheyenne River Basin, kind of the Colorado headwaters region. You can see some red squares there, and also some orange and yellow ones, which show data in the bottom 10th to 25th percentile there. Again, very dry conditions. Go to our website, check these out, especially as a lot of these gauges start to melt and we start seeing zero snowpack values there, zero snow water equivalent values. You'll be able to kind of see where these rank in a historical context. So again, record dry conditions. When we did this webinar live over the phone, we had a question that asked, how does this rank historically? Like, where does this compare? Is it unprecedented? And I think from a temperature standpoint, you can say these are record-breaking temperatures. We're seeing record-breaking winter values throughout the upper basin. It was a record warm winter here in Salt Lake City. So, in a sense, those are a bit unprecedented. Streamflow-wise, precip-wise, it's hard to say, but I was looking through our data sets the other day and kind of looking, trying to see where this year is kind of ranking out and that kind of stuff. And it's hard to say because we don't know what's going to happen with the April through July runoff period and that sort of stuff. But 2012, which was a very dry year, we had similar early runoff, in that January through March timeframe, particularly in March. We're doing a bit better this year. Our stream flows are a bit higher this year. Our snowpack and our precipitation values are a bit higher this year. But similarly, they're ranking pretty close to each other, 2012 and 2015, just as far as like the stream flow goes around the basin. So we'll see what the rest of the year holds for us. But I would say, it's not unreasonable to make a comparison between this year and 2012 so far. Looking again at the stream flow, these are those gauged values, and these come from the USGS website. So these are regulated values. Typically when we're showing data, we're looking at unregulated flows. But you can see here, a lot of these flows are running well above average. So when you see that black line showing the observed values in 2015, if it starts to get into those blues, that blue shaded region, that's the above average region. Those are the flows that historically have been above average. And, a lot of these sites are, in excess of 50 years worth of records. So we'll definitely be able to show you a little bit more, but just kind of looking down in the bottom left corner here, the Colorado River near Cameo, that's a popular gauge for kind of assessing the hydrology of the region. We're slightly above average here. Long record, 80 years worth of record on the 28-day average discharge. And it's not really intuitive that this is what you'd see with below snowpack conditions. But this is the kind of pattern you see when you have abnormally warm temperatures and poor snowpack conditions that just lend itself towards early runoff. So that's kind of what I wanted to emphasize right here, is that despite the poor snowpack conditions, we're getting flows that are well above average, but this isn't going to last. As that snowpack disappears on us, we're going to start seeing well below average snowpack stream flow conditions in the April through July runoff period. So let's kind of look at some of our basin snow groups here. Again, these are accumulations of NRCS snowtail sites for different areas. In the top left corner here, you see the Yampa above Deer Lodge. And a common theme you're going to see here is that, this green line is showing the current year, 2015. And ideally, you'd like to see this green line at least follow the same trend as the blue and purple lines, which show the average and the median values. And you can see usually about this time, we're still accumulating snowpack through March. We're not really melting, but in the Yampa group here, you can see we were accumulating snowpack to about the first week of March. Then we kind of leveled off, and you can start to see where we just started to lose snowpack here. So from about second week or so of March through today, we're losing snowpack again, just speaking to those warm temperatures. And you can just see how much below average we were. Last year in the Yampa River Basin, we had an above average year. That's in the red line right there. We're well below last year's conditions in the Yampa River Basin, and below average and median conditions as well. And that's going to be a common theme through these through these plots. So the Bear River drainage group, you can see again well below normal conditions, started melting off about the beginning of March there, and we're continuing that trend right now. Over in the Weber River Basin, again, big declines, particularly since the beginning of March. We had that quick little storm that came through, bumped things up, and since then we've been melting away right there. Over in the Provo River Basin, again, you know, that quick little storm that we mentioned at the beginning of the talk just kind of bumped things up just a little bit, and just in time for us to start melting there. So we're on a downward trend there. Kind of looking at the upper Colorado main stem, you can see that hydrograph kind of churning near the beginning of the month. Again, we're starting to melt. Over at the Blue Mesa group in the Gunnison River Basin, things are kind of holding steady a little bit there. Again, well below normal, but you know, we're still kind of starting to see that little bit of a downward trend there. The Dolores River Basin, you can see where we had that nice little storm that came through at the beginning of March, and since then it's just been very warm conditions and a whole lot of melt going on. And over in the San Juans really benefited from that storm kind of at the end of February. Got us back up to last year's conditions, which were still pretty dry, still pretty below normal. But again, you can see where last year we had those cold temperatures. They kind of sustained us for a little bit before we started to melt at about the beginning of April-ish or so. You know, here we're starting to melt about the middle of March. Early March is when a lot of this melt was seen. So how does that translate into our hydrologic model? Well, you can see on the left our modeled snowpack values back in February, and you can see, you know, Great Basin notwithstanding, we had some pretty good conditions up in the upper Green River Basin. Not too bad of conditions in the Colorado headwaters region, and Yampa, and kind of in the headwaters of the Gunnison. San Juan was still doing pretty dry, but you know, we kind of expect that. And man, just how bad was March? We just didn't see the accumulation that we usually do in March. We didn't see the cold temperatures keep that snowpack with us, and you can see just how dry things have become and how much snow we've lost over the past month or so. So you can see dry conditions where we used to have them in the upper Green. Dry conditions, we're still holding out hope a little bit out here at the very eastern edges of the Colorado headwaters, but well below average conditions throughout the basin as far as our model is concerned. So Greg's been showing these plots the last few weeks, and typically highlighting areas where there's a good agreement with above average conditions and below average conditions. Well, this month there's no above average conditions on the modeled snowpack to compare to the modeled soil moisture. So we just have a lot of areas of below average conditions, both with regards to soil moisture and with regards to snowpack. You can see up here in the Great Basin region, kind of looking down into the Sevier River Basin, below average conditions, below average soil moistures. That typically means inefficient runoff, low forecast values. In the headwaters of the San Juan River Basin, again, dry conditions, both with regards to soil moisture and snowpack. So below average conditions. So we'll see what ends up happening here. You know, last year we had pretty good soil moisture conditions heading into this current water year at the Colorado headwaters and in the Yampa River Basin and parts of the Gunnison. So hopefully that'll help out a little bit, but you know, right now we're just heading into this runoff season with well below average snowpack, and that really drives our model and our forecast. So let's get to the forecast here. These are kind of the highlights. You can see all the forecasts on our website. But our April 1st forecast, these are presented as percent of averages and as April through July volumes. These are the 50th percentiles on our exceedance forecast. Just kind of looking over in the Great Basin area, the Bear River at the Utah-Wyoming state line, we're coming in at just about 70% of average. The Weber at Oakley, just a little bit over 50% of average. And over at the Provo River near Woodland, just over 60% of average. again, dry conditions throughout the Great Basin. Going over to the upper Colorado River Basin, Flaming Gorge, about 650,000 acre feet, 66% of average. The Yampa at Deer Lodge, just under 60% of average. Colorado near Cameo, where we still think we have some decent snowpack on those eastern edges, coming in at just under 80% of average. Blue Mesa over in the Gunnison River Basin, just over 70% of average. The McPhee Reservoir over in the Dolores, just under 50% of average. And the Navajo Reservoir in the San Juans, just over 40% of average. And the big one, Lake Powell, coming in at 3.75 million acre feet, just over 50% of average there. Not a great forecast, especially for those hoping for fuller conditions at Lake Powell and Lake Mead. So again, just dry conditions throughout March have led to some relatively low water supply forecasts. Comparing this to what happened last month, you can see we just dropped our forecast pretty much everywhere. I don't think there was anywhere where our forecast stayed the same or rose anywhere. You can see a total around the Great Basin area. Our forecast dropped between about 10 to 15,000 acre feet in most areas. Looking at the upper Colorado River Basin, really big drops here. So at Flaming Gorge, a decrease of about 175,000 acre feet. Yampa at Deer Lodge almost decreased 200,000 acre feet. Colorado at Cameo, a decrease of 270,000 acre feet. Blue Mesa and McPhee and Navajo, we're decreasing things around 100,000 acre feet. And Powell, this is just a really big drop in our forecast here, just reflecting just how bad March was. So we decreased our April through July forecast there by 1.35 million acre feet. That's a lot of water. So anyways, very, very dry conditions, and just leading to some very dry forecasts. Heading down to the lower Colorado River Basin, because we don't want to forget our friends there in the lower Colorado River Basin. Because of the convective nature of storms and that kind of stuff, we present these as a percent of median, and because snowpack isn't as prevalent in this area, we do a January through May forecast here, and you can see over at the Little Colorado at Lyman, we actually do a January through June forecast there. But as percent of median, the Verde River near Horseshoe Reservoir almost coming in near normal there. Same with the Gila at Gila, just a bit above the median value there at 110% of median. The Little Colorado at Lyman, just 30% of median though, and the Salt River near Roosevelt, only 44% of median. So again, dry conditions aren't just confined to the upper basin. The whole Colorado River Basin is really in seeing some dry conditions this year. So kind of looking at our evolution plots and hitting the highlights here, and you can go to our website and you can get all of these evolution plots. We update them daily so you can see the most up-to-date information and the most up-to-date raw model guidance that we have. But just hitting the highlights here, the Green River at Flaming Gorge, you can see our official forecast for April here as indicated in this red line, and you can see our past official forecast, and you can see just how they've been trending downward since January, along with our daily model guidance, which is kind of illustrated in the blue. You'll start to see, it's really hard to see. I kind of try to highlight them with this yellow box here, and if you look really close and kind of squint your eyes, you can see some orange bars starting to show up. Now that we're in our April through July forecast period, you'll start seeing the daily observations begin to come in here, and we use those observations to add into our forecast. So you'll start seeing the effect of the observed stream flows on our forecast. So kind of hard to see, but you'll start seeing these red bars. We're on day number 8 here of April. So go to our website and you'll probably see about 8 of these orange bars showing the observed stream flows that we're seeing here over at the RFC. So again, just seeing the highlights here, Green River at Flaming Gorge, just about 66% of average. Colorado over at Cameo, just under 80% of average. You can just see how much that forecast has fallen since January, when we were showing above average conditions, and now we're well below average. The San Juan near Bluff, that one, started out dry. Last year was dry. We had dry soil moisture conditions in the area. We're only forecasting about 40% of average there, but we started out below average there, and that trend has continued. The Weber at Oakley over in the Great Basin, just about 50% of average forecasted there. You can see we were near average at the start of the year, we were hovering around the 90%, 95% of average range there, and just dry conditions, and just the lack of storm activity and snowpack accumulation has really driven these down. And then the big one, Lake Powell at Glen Canyon, sorry. You can see we were forecasting just below average conditions there in January, and you can just see how far we dropped. And you can see in February and March, forecast didn't change too much, but between March and April, just those dry conditions, again, just really setting the way for some of these forecasts. So let's talk about these record-breaking conditions here. So we've done some preliminary analysis here at the River Forecast Center, and of all the SNOTEL stations that we take a look at here, 7 of the SNOTEL stations are currently showing the earliest date of 0 snow water equivalent on record. And right now those are all in Utah, particularly in the Duchesne River Basin and in the Great Basin. 5 others showed 0 snow water equivalent in the top 5 of earliest dates. So we're seeing the snowpack disappear much earlier than usual. And just kind of doing a preliminary analysis on the trend of these early snowmelt dates, we're showing at least 18 of these SNOTEL sites that show a statistically significant trend at the 95% confidence interval towards earlier melt on the order of a half to a full day per year. And so that was a lot of statistics speak coming out. But basically what we did was we said, hey, let's look at all these melt dates. When do we get to that 0 SWE value from year to year? And so if you imagine, if we look at the day-to-day records for one site, and we say, okay, we're picking out, May 1st and May 26th and April 18th and a bunch of these days for each year where we first see that 0 SWE value. And so we can just apply a linear trend line to those values, and we can say, hey, does that trend make sense? Does this line make sense? And so we do a fancy statistical test just to see if that trend line is an adequate approximation. And for at least 18 sites, it is. And so that's kind of interesting. We didn't really dive into these records. We didn't look at, has there been land cover changes or anything like that going on. So we can't say for certain that, hey, there's some serious impacts going on here. But at most of these sites are in wooded areas that haven't been really affected by land cover change. I think it's a significant trend that we are seeing snowpack melt earlier in the season, especially for a lot of these sites. And now that we were getting around 35 years of data for a lot of these SNOTEL sites, it's nice to be able to do these kinds of statistics on it just to kind of see where we're going. So I don't know, something really interesting. We'll probably take a look at it closer here once the runoff season has gone by. But really interesting stuff. Hit me up if you want to know a bit more about it. Oh no. How do I get back to my presentation? Okay, so that's what happens when you're using your boss's computer. Anyways, so again, talking about these record-breaking conditions, Early runoff, record March unregulated flow volumes at the Bear River at Utah-Wyoming state line, Hams Fork near Frontier, the South Fork Rock Creek below Docks Diversion. Some of the highest March unregulated flow volumes that we've seen. Also some almost record breakers, and I won't go through the list here, but in the Great Basin, the Duchesne, these areas, we're seeing these high stream flow volumes, and I think it just speaks to the very unusual and warm year that we're having this year, and dry year. Looking at the upper Colorado, flows have been running much above average all winter, particularly above Kremlin. 5 of the 8 water supply points set new records for the month, including record high inflows at the Rudai Reservoir at the Roaring Fork. And then 11 of the 14 water supply points above Cameo were in the top 3 monthly volumes. And for a lot of those records there, we've got in excess of 50 years worth of data. So these aren't just skewed statistics or a short time period that we're looking at. We're looking at very long records, and we're seeing things that haven't happened very often in that historic record. So just kind of talking about some of the upcoming weather that we've got here. We've got a low pressure system that we're hoping will bring some activity our way. We're already starting to see some of that here in Salt Lake City. We're not expecting a very heavy storm, but we're thinking maybe half an inch to an inch over the next couple days. And you can kind of see when we look at the weather models, you can kind of see that we think this storm is going to affect mostly northern Utah, southern Wyoming, kind of this upper Colorado river basin area, and parts of the Great Basin region. So that's what we're hoping for. Oops. And when you go look at the CPC website, you can see they're thinking about the same thing we are, about half an inch to an inch throughout the upper Colorado River Basin and Great Basin region there. Also kind of looking at our weather models, there is some more activity out there in the Pacific Ocean region, kind of again over in the Pacific Northwest. And we're kind of hoping that the models are a little bit wrong, but right now that storm looks like it's going to kind of break apart and split and kind of go around us. So you can kind of see where I've got the arrows kind of splitting and going around us. We think most of the storm activity out there right now is going to split and go around us, but that could change. We'll cross our fingers. Just a quick note about peak flow. We have updated those, and because of the really poor snowpack conditions, we're expecting the peaks to be below average and earlier than normal. Well below average and well earlier than normal in a lot of places. You can get to those peaks in graphical form or in list form on our website. I've got the direct links there on the slide. We probably won't have another peak flow webinar unless there's a want or a need for it. So if there is, let me know, and we'll get that out for you. And then just a quick thing, other NOAA news going on out there. The National Climatic Data Center, the NCDC, and a bunch of these other data centers that you might use out there, they're all going to merge into one called the National Centers for Environmental Information. And also with a nifty new circular logo there in the bottom right corner. You should still have access to all the data and archives that you've been accustomed to. It's a top priority to maintain the current products and services that are out there, and there's no plans to currently cut any of those things, but you'll probably see changes to the websites. You'll probably see changes in how you access this particular data, but hopefully it's easier, hopefully it's better. I think things will go pretty well for us. And hey, contact us. We really love to hear from you guys, and we really like to hear from you with any of your questions or comments or concerns, or if there's anything we can do for you. Feel free to email any of us. Michelle Stokes is our boss. She's the hydrologist in charge. Brenda Alcorn does the forecast for the Colorado headwaters. Greg Smith does the San Juan Basin and the Gunnison and Dolores. Ashley Nielsen does the Green River Basin. Tracy Cox takes a look at the lower Colorado Basin. And I do the forecasting for the Great Basin region. Also, socialize with us. We're on Twitter and Facebook. Brent Bernard in our office, I think he does a really great job with this social media stuff. And it's also a great way to check out the latest information on your phone. You know, a lot of these sites have apps and stuff for your phone. So go ahead and check that out. We would love to be your friend or your Twitter friend, or I don't know what you call your Twitter friend. But anyways. And with that, you know, if there's any questions, again, just give us a call and or go to our website or send us an email. We're definitely open to all of that. Again, hey, thanks for sitting through this somewhat depressing news, but you know, hopefully things turn the corner here, and we'll talk to you next time. Thanks. Have a good one.